Okay, we'll call this meeting to order. Welcome to the Tuesday, April 22nd, 2025, regularly scheduled meeting of the House Committee on Finance. Clerk Campbell Crawley, please take attendance.
Chair Tisdall.
Here.
Representatives Frisbee.
Here.
Vanderwall.
Present.
Leitner.
Here.
Martin.
He gave prior notice. He's running just a bit behind.
Posthumous.
Here.
Alexander.
Here.
Aragona.
Here.
Schutte.
Here.
Hoskins.
Here.
Carter.
Here.
Neely.
Here.
Breen. Young.
Here.
Pies. Mr. Chair, you have 13 members present. You do have a quorum.
Okay, I need a motion to accept or adopt the minutes. Representative Neely. Without objection, that's a go. Votes, House Bill 4201. There is an H3 substitute. This was produced by the Treasury Department, and it is a simple technical fix that they wanted something that just a little less ambiguous language, apparently. So it's just a language substitute. I need a motion to report out House Bill 4201 with recommendation. Oh, we got to do the sub next. Well, let's do that. Take the vote. Oh, we need a motion on that. From Representative Leitner. Are you good with that?
Yep.
She is good with that. Go ahead.
On the motion to adopt the H3 substitute, Chair Tisdall.
Yes.
Representatives Frisbee.
Yes.
Vanderwall.
Yes.
Leitner.
Yes.
Martin. Posthumous.
Yes.
Alexander.
Yes.
Aragona.
Yes.
Schutte.
Yes.
Hoskins.
Yes.
Carter.
Yes.
Neely.
Yes.
Breen. Young.
Yes.
Pies.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 13 yea, 0 nay, 0 pass. The motion prevails.
All right. Pardon me? Go. We're going to wait for a couple more people to show up, and we'll move along to testimony on House Bill 4287. Representative Bohnak, come on up, and the stakeholders. When you're ready.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair and fellow committee members, for allowing me to speak on behalf of my House Bill 4287. This bill would ensure that taxpayer dollars go completely toward the expansion of reliable internet access and exempts federal grant money from the state's redundant double tax. Our world is innovating and changing quickly, and a lot of what we do is online, including many things essential to everyday life. This includes online banking, telehealth, schooling, and even some careers. It's crucial that we take the necessary steps in allowing our most rural communities to have these options at a reasonable cost. And by the state taxing taxpayer money for the second time, only prevents access to resources and slows the expansion of services Michiganders are in need of. I thank you for your time and consideration.
Okay, very good. Any other comments? Go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Jennifer Greenberg. I'm with Peninsula Fiber Network. Thank you, Chairman and committee members, for allowing us to testify on the bill. Just a little bit about PFN. We're a Michigan company. We're headquartered in Marquette, Michigan. We are owned and operated by two family-owned companies in the UP, Hiawatha Communications and Baraga Telephone. We have offices in Lansing and Mount Pleasant. We have about 5,000 miles of broadband fiber throughout the state of Michigan, and we have just about 60 employees. PFN is a middle mile provider, and I just sort of for context, when we think of like a highway, when you think of the super highway, we don't really put houses on I-75, right? Those are kind of off over there. And so a middle mile provider is like that off ramp. You take that highway exit and the middle mile connects you to the house. And so in terms of broadband, PFN is a middle mile provider. We provide that off ramp, and then we provide capacity for end user providers or other broadband providers to serve people's homes. We also provide service to cell towers and work with our cellular friends. And then we are in each of your counties. We help to complete 4.6 million 911 emergency calls last year as the provider of next-gen 911 services in the state of Michigan. So we're really proud to partner with all of your counties. So our commitment to design middle-mile networks, back in 2022, we applied for the federal NTIA Enabling Middle Mile Grant. And in July of 23, we received the award. And we are investing $13 million of our own private capital into this award. It is a $67 million project, plus the $26 million investment with our 123 net partners. And the object of that grant is to add increased capacity of middle mile throughout the state. In the essence of time, I provided you information about the project. Happy to answer any questions that you have about it, but I'll let you read that on your own. So why we're here today, thank you for the allowing me to introduce, is for House Bill 4287. Prior to 2017, grant funding was exempt from the corporate income tax. So if a company received grant funds, we did not have to count that funding as revenue, sort of across the board when we look at grants. It was exempt from the corporate income tax at the federal level. Because Michigan followed the federal tax guidelines, therefore, federal grant funding was exempt from Michigan's corporate income tax. There was changes at the federal level that removed that exemption, and that means that grant funds are now subject to the 6% Michigan corporate income tax and the 22% federal corporate tax. So, as you know, the last 18 months, the state has had several broadband grant funding opportunities. It's really culminated in well over $1.5 billion in broadband grant funding being available in the state of Michigan to build out broadband infrastructure. So this legislation positively impacts that $1.8 billion because it eliminates the corporate income taxes on those broadband grants. The bill specifically delineates which broadband grant programs are eligible to utilize this exemption, and it's aimed only at broadband infrastructure grants, so it is a very targeted exemption. It has a natural sunset because each of the grant programs listed in the bill have a completion and compliance date when the infrastructure must be built, so it naturally sunsets itself. And then one of the other reasons we support this bill is because it helps to free up valuable capital over the life of the grant. So it allows companies to invest more in broadband networks and connecting customers, even in the midst of this grant program. So just a little bit of background, when providers are preparing their grant applications, and I'll use us as an example, we had to when we had to account for the actual cost of the build, the project, the fiber, the land acquisition, the permitting fees, the employee costs, electronics, equipment, all that sort of goes onto that spreadsheet. But then we also had to account for the match component of the grant, or how much our company was willing to put on the line to win the grant, but also like invest in the network that's going to stay in the ground in the state of Michigan. And so as you know, many of these competitive grant programs, they take a look at that match amount, and that counts towards a successful grant program or not. And then while we were doing the math on all that, we had to we had to account for our tax exposure if we were to win. So what would it look like to pay corporate income tax if we were to win this award? So for us, the tax exposure is about $5 million over 5 years because of the size of the project. And so, you have to keep that in mind. It's like saving for a rainy day. We couldn't, in our minds, keep that $5 million and put it in the ground because we know we have that $5 million tax bill sort of holding out there. So unlike the actual cost of the project, we know that every dollar that broadband providers put in the corporate income tax on grant funding dollars is money that cannot be spent on infrastructure. So we can't use it to build out broadband networks, and it doesn't allow companies like ours to fully leverage the actual grant itself. So we recognize our tax responsibility, and so during the life of this project, and any other broadband project, broadband providers are still paying payroll taxes, they're still paying employee taxes, property, sales, use tax, vehicles, the list is probably endless. And in some cases, the cost of these taxes actually increases, right? So the value of that property increases as it goes further into the project and gets lit up. So, and then finally, I guess, when you take a look at it, is that even though there are broadband providers and we're all working on these grant projects after we receive them, that's only part of the story. We still have our whole other network that's operating here and has to remain up and operational during whatever construction we have going on this grant. So lessening the tax exposure on grant money is, if that's eliminated, then that doesn't mean we just put that savings in our pocket and we go home. It allows us to continue our regular capital investments on this whole network that we have that ties into this new grant network. We have costs of regular network maintenance. We have other planned broadband deployments to serve customers. And there's just never end to the equipment upgrades that continue throughout the whole network in itself. So this broadband funding is once in a lifetime opportunity for Michigan and for all of the broadband companies that are going to invest here. So we want to leverage that federal broadband grant dollars and use it to deploy as much broadband as possible. So when we're at a grant, as part of the grant, if we're already down a road and the grant's paying for us to go a mile, well, what if we were to put our own capital and go 2 more miles? The equipment's already there, everything's there. We would have to pay for it ourselves, but that's a much better use of that dollar and much more efficient because everything's in process to be built than, we would argue, than paying tax on money that's already been taxed. So this bill decreases the financial risk of broadband grants, and it allows us to invest in Michigan infrastructure without incurring the additional and unnecessary tax burden. So I'm happy to answer any questions as well.
I don't see any questions. Joelle, did you want to speak also?
Yeah, just give me a few minutes to clean up here. My name's Joelle Demand. I'm the president of the Broadband Association of Michigan. We have 43 members who are broadband providers in this state. 29 of those are former incumbent local telephone companies. We used to be called the Telephone Association of Michigan. So we support this bill. PFN is one of our members, and she mentioned 2 companies that started her company, and they are my members as well. They're actually on my board. We support this bill. We for all the reasons Representative Bohnak and Jennifer talked about. And she mentioned $1.8 billion that's coming to Michigan. The $1.5 billion largest program ever that's coming to Michigan, it's called BEAD. It just closed its application period on the 9th, and they had 40 applicants. 40 providers applied for these grants. Of that, 18 were my members. And they had over 390 applications to serve 190,000 locations in the state. So we're talking about $1.5 billion still coming. I have members who are working on other federal grants that they've competed for and won, other state grants that they've competed for and won. So like she said, this will apply to all of those grants. They have fixed end dates. Members, if they win a grant, they have to provide and they have to install. And Representative Tisdale has also pointed out to us, they also still will pay property taxes on that new infrastructure once it's installed. So this is a small piece of the puzzle. I think Jennifer talked really well about her specific grant program. So this bill, like is the CIT is 6%. The federal, my counterpart in DC is also working on this federally. That's another 19%. So it's a 26% tax on this grant money. So we appreciate your consideration. Thank you for the hearing, and we're available to answer questions.
No questions. 1 card to read in. In favor, not wishing to speak, Gavin Getz, AT&T. Let's go at ease for just a minute. Thank you very much. Call this meeting back to order. And now I need a motion to move with recommendation House Bill 4201, Mr. Schuette, Representative Schuette. Clerk, please call the vote.
On the motion to report as substitute H3, Chair Tisdale,
Yes.
Representatives Frisbee,
Yes.
Vanderwall,
Yes.
Leitner,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Posthumous,
Yes.
Alexander,
Yes.
Aragona,
Yes.
Shooty,
Yes.
Hoskins, Carter,
Pass.
Neely,
Pass.
Breen, Young,
Pass.
Pies.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 10 yea, 0 nay, 4 pass. The motion prevails.
Very good, and so that moves with recommendation. Thank you. Need a motion to excuse absent members. Representative T. Carter, and that without objection. No more business in front of this committee. Meeting adjourned.